Take your hand off the guitar, Mr. Reed. The sale is final. Wesley Bell slammed the red sold stamp onto the receipt as Marcus kept one palm around the cedar neck and Lila hugged a worn blue music folio against her coat. Daddy, she whispered. Mom's song is stuck in my head. She hummed for soft bars. Across the shop, a woman in a gray coat froze, gripping a recorder marked Whitmore Archive 14B. Who taught her the ending? She asked. 3 hours earlier, Marcus Reed had stood beneath the flickering kitchen light in his Bronzeville apartment, counting the same crumpled bills for the 4th time. The pay or vacate notice lay face down beside an unopened can of soup. Even after selling the guitar, he would still be nearly $200 short, but it was the only thing he owned that could buy them another day. Lila sat at the table with her blue folio open, tracing the little bird Naomi had drawn beside the chorus years ago. Marcus closed the book gently before the child could see the red notice reflected in the window. Coat on, he said. We have an errand. He carried the guitar himself. The winter air slipped through the worn shoulder of his faded denim jacket as they walked past the train tracks, and every passing will seem to keep the same slow rhythm Naomi once tapped on the guitar's body. At Mason and Bell, the air smelled of lemon oil, old wood, and dust warmed by fluorescent lights. Wesley Bell greeted Marcus with the practiced sympathy of a man who had already decided how little another person's desperation was worth. Beautiful instrument, he said, turning the cedar body beneath the light. Wrong market, though. People want names, history, something they can resell. His thumb paused over the crescent-shaped scratch near the bridge. Then he offered less than half the amount Marcus had expected. Marcus studied the number, then looked at Lila. She was pretending not to listen, both arms wrapped around Naomi's folio. You said on the phone it could bring more. Wesley smiled as if explaining weather to a child. That was before I saw the where. I'm trying to help you here. Marcus did not raise his voice. Write the serial number correctly, and give me a full copy of the receipt. Wesley's smile held, but one corner tightened. While he entered the sale, Lila drifted toward an old upright piano near the wall. She lifted one finger toward a chipped ivory key. Wesley snapped the lid down before she touched it. Let's not handle what we can't afford. Marcus moved between them without touching the man. His voice stayed low. Talk to me, not to her. The store went quiet except for the hum of the lights. Marcus crouched, retied Lila's loose shoelace, and whispered, None of this is your fault. Then he returned to the counter, removed the worn strap embroidered with Naomi's name, folded it once, and slipped it inside his coat. That was when Wesley stamped the paper. Lila began to hum, and the woman in gray stopped breathing. Marcus turned toward her. Her face had gone pale, but her eyes were not on him. They were fixed on the blue folio. Who taught her the ending? She repeated. Marcus's fingers tightened around the strap in his pocket. She didn't sing the ending. For one beat, no one moved. Then Wesley pulled a brown cloth over the guitar, hiding the crescent scratch, and told Marcus the receipt printer was malfunctioning. As Marcus led Lila toward the door, he glanced back through the glass reflection. Wesley had uncovered the guitar again. He photographed the serial number and sent the image to a contact whose name showed only one letter before the screen went dark. G. The single letter on Wesley's phone stayed in Marcus's mind all the way down the block. G. Nothing more. He could not prove what he had seen in the glass, and he had learned long ago that suspicion without proof only gave powerful people another reason to call a poor man difficult. Beside him, Lila walked with Naomi's blue music folio pressed beneath her coat. Was that lady mad at me? No. Did I sing wrong? No. Then why did she look scared? Marcus glanced back at the music store. Through the front window, Wesley was already carrying the cedar guitar toward the rear office instead of the sales wall. Some people remember things before they understand why, he said. The train passed above them, shaking rust from the elevated tracks. Lila's small hand found his, and Marcus held it without telling her that the money in his pocket still would not keep their apartment. The pay or vacate notice was waiting when they reached the building. It had been taped at eye level in the center of the door, not slipped beneath it, where every neighbor walking through the hallway could read the red letters. Someone had pressed the tape flat along all four edges. Marcus stood still long enough to hear the radiator ticking inside the apartment. Mr. Reed. The property manager approached with a leather folder tucked beneath one arm. His tie was neat, his voice soft, and the sympathy on his face had the clean, practiced shape of something used many times. I was hoping we could avoid this. I brought most of it. Most isn't the amount due. I can have the rest Friday. The manager opened the folder but did not look at the bills Marcus held out. The hallway smelled of floor wax and someone's onions frying 2 doors down. Lila stared at the notice, her fingers tightening around the folio until the worn blue cover bowed inward. The policy is applied equally, the manager said. I have owners to answer to too. Take this now. Put the balance in writing. Partial payments complicate enforcement. Marcus looked at the untouched money between them. The manager's shoes shone beneath the buzzing ceiling light. His eyes dropped once to Marcus's faded denim jacket, then to the folio in Lila's arms. There are family shelters with music programs, he added gently. This doesn't have to become a scene. Marcus's jaw moved, but his voice stayed level. My daughter is standing here. Don't turn her life into a suggestion. The manager closed the folder. For a second, the hallway held only the hum of the light and the faint scrape of a chair behind a neighbor's door. Then he placed a business card on top of the notice instead of taking the money. 8 tomorrow morning, Mr. Reed. After that, the process moves forward. Lila waited until he had gone downstairs. Are we sleeping outside? Marcus peeled the notice from the door carefully so the paper would not tear. I'm working on tomorrow, he said. Tonight, you're safe. Inside, he turned the red side of the notice face down beneath the grocery flyer. He heated canned soup, added water to make it stretch, and tapped rhythms on the table so Lila could guess the songs. She smiled on the 3rd try but not on the 4th. When she opened Naomi's folio to put it away, a torn slip of cream-colored paper slid from the back pocket and landed beside her bowl. 4 faded numbers were still visible near the bottom. 1-4B. Above them sat half of a blue oval stamp and the words received by Whitmore Music, though the name beneath had been ripped away. Marcus lifted the paper by its edges. Did Mom put that there? Lila asked. I don't know. Is it important? He looked at the clean tear where a name should have been. It might be. Across the city, Claire Whitmore entered Archive 14B into an off-site catalog terminal. The result appeared in gray type. Destroyed, water damage, and no surviving media. Claire looked down at the recorder resting beside her keyboard, its copper corner newly repaired with Marcus's guitar wire. She requested the destruction log. Before the page loaded, a new order appeared under her credentials. Dispose of all remaining copies associated with Box 14B. Claire had not issued it. She touched the recorder, then read the order again. If Box 14B had been destroyed years ago, why was someone trying to destroy it a second time? Claire stared at the false destruction order until the terminal screen dimmed around her reflection. Someone had seen her search for Box 14B. Someone had moved before she could ask why a recording marked destroyed was resting beside her hand. She printed nothing, copied the order number onto a plain receipt, and shut down the terminal before the system could record another request. Across Bronzeville, Marcus folded the torn Whitmore slip back into Naomi's blue folio and walked Lila to school beneath a sky the color of unpolished steel. Will you come back before music club? She asked. I'll try. That means maybe. That means I'm going to work at it. At the front doors, he gave her the better half of the granola bar from his jacket pocket and waited until she was safely inside. Then, he checked the time. His temporary baggage shift at O'Hare began in less than 2 hours, but Wesley still had not given him a valid receipt, and without it Marcus could not prove what had happened to the only thing he had left worth selling. The bell above Mason and Bell gave a tired metallic rattle when he stepped inside. Wesley stood behind the counter polishing a trumpet that was already clean. The cedar guitar was nowhere on the display wall. Printer working now? Marcus asked. You'll get your paperwork. I need it today. You need patience. Wesley's tone stayed professional, almost kind. He set the trumpet down on a folded cloth and glanced at Marcus's faded jacket as if patience were another thing poor men should accept in place of fairness. Near the cassette shelf, Claire stood with the recorder in both hands. Its copper corner had split open, and a thin loop of tape protruded from the compartment like a dark ribbon. She looked as though she had come to ask a question, but when the machine emitted a warped, dragging note, her breathing changed. One hand tightened around the counter. The other missed the latch twice. Wesley sighed. Ma'am, those archive units are delicate. You may want to take it to a specialist. I just need it to stop. Then remove the batteries. I can't open it. Marcus saw the tremor in her fingers before Wesley did, or before Wesley chose to. He set the blue folio beneath his arm and pulled the only chair away from the lesson desk. Sit down, he said. Claire looked at him, embarrassed by being seen. I'm fine. You don't have to prove that right now. He placed the chair behind her, then handed her the unopened bottle of water he had packed for his airport shift. Wesley watched with a thin smile. Mr. Reed, unless you're buying something, perhaps don't handle merchandise. Marcus did not answer. He crouched beside the recorder, careful not to pull the exposed tape. The brass latch had snapped away from the plastic housing. From the small repair tin in his coat, he removed the final length of spare guitar wire, bent it through the hinge, and secured the door without touching the recorded surface. Claire's breathing slowly matched the steady movement of his hands. The store smelled of valve oil and lemon polish. Outside, a bus exhaled at the curb, then rolled away. Try it now, Marcus said. Claire pressed play. 12 seconds of music moved through the tiny speaker, soft cedar strings, a woman's breath, then 2 faint metallic taps before the melody began. Marcus's hand stopped over the recorder. He knew those taps. Naomi used to strike her wedding ring against the guitar body when she wanted him to find the tempo without counting aloud. Then the sound ended with a clean, unnatural click. Claire reached for her wallet. Please, let me pay you. Marcus folded her fingers back over the bills. Keep it. Grief already charges enough. He stood, tucked the repair tin away, and checked the time again. He would have to run for the train. Claire studied him as if kindness had made him more suspicious, not less. You don't know who I am, she said. Marcus slid Naomi's blue folio safely inside his coat. That shouldn't change whether I help you. Behind them, Wesley reached beneath the counter and unplugged the nearest speaker. We don't permit Whitmore material to be played in the store, he said. Claire turned slowly. She had never mentioned Whitmore. Marcus looked from Wesley to the recorder, then back to the tiny length of exposed tape. Play the last second again, he said. Claire did. The click came in the exact place Naomi's bridge should have begun. Marcus listened once more, his face going still. That tape didn't break, he said. Someone cut it. Claire did not answer Marcus at once. The recorder sat between them on the counter, its copper corner held shut by the thin guitar wire he had bent into place. Because his hands had touched the machine, because he had opened the casing, because he was the man claiming the missing bridge belonged to his dead wife, every explanation could now be turned against him. Wesley reached for the recorder. There's your problem, he said pleasantly. He tampered with it. I repaired the latch. You opened archival equipment. The tape never left the reel. Claire watched Marcus instead of Wesley. Her face had regained its color, but suspicion had settled behind her eyes. Marcus understood it. A person who wanted the truth could not accept his word simply because he had been kind. He removed his hands from the counter. Have someone independent check it, he said. Not your company, not him, and not me. The fluorescent tubes above them gave a faint electrical buzz. Wesley's polishing cloth stopped moving over the trumpet, then resumed more slowly. 2 hours later, Claire sat across from Marcus at a long oak table in a private examination room at the Harold Washington Library. Between them, an independent audio archivist wore white cotton gloves and worked beneath a cold inspection lamp. Marcus had missed the beginning of his airport shift and would lose 4 hours of pay, but he did not mention it. Naomi's blue folio remained beneath his palm, inside a clear protective sleeve. "Before we begin," Claire said, "I need to be direct. You handled the recorder. You recognized the music immediately, and your family may have a financial claim if the recording is what you say it is. That's true. You understand why I can't treat your memory as evidence. You shouldn't." The answer made her pause. Marcus did not lean forward or try to read her expression. He watched the archivist guide the tape beneath a magnifying lens, where the brown surface gleamed like a narrow river under white light. "There," the archivist said. She pointed with a wooden tool. The tape had been joined by a nearly invisible strip of clear splicing material. This wasn't torn by age. Someone cut it cleanly and rejoined it. Claire's fingers tightened around the edge of the table. "When? I can't give you a date yet, but this splice was made deliberately." She turned the cassette over. The label marked Archive 14B had a pale rim around one corner. Under magnification, fresh adhesive shone beneath older yellow glue. The label was removed and put back on later. Claire glanced toward Marcus. He did not say "I told you so." He only asked, "What was underneath it?" The archivist angled the cassette toward the lamp. A faint pencil mark showed through the paper. 2 letters and part of a number, too blurred to read. Claire wrote nothing down. She had already learned that someone inside Whitmore could see what she searched. Marcus opened Naomi's folio himself and held it beneath the light without releasing it. The blue ink of the original melody had faded toward gray. Black corrections followed the same pressure and slant, written later but by the same hand. The archivist examined the tiny bird beside the chorus, then the torn copyright slip from the rear pocket. Lila had come from school with Marcus's neighbor and sat quietly at the far end of the table coloring on scrap paper. When the archivist asked whether the receipt had always been torn, Lila looked up. "It was like that when Mommy put it in the blue book," she said. "She told me not to pull the little paper out." Marcus touched her shoulder once. "That's all you need to remember, baby." The archivist placed the torn slip beside the cassette label. For faded characters remained 14B. The partial Whitmore receiving stamp crossed the upper edge, but the employee signature had been removed with a straight tear. Claire's phone vibrated against the wood. An email from Grant Mercer filled the screen. "Be careful, Claire. Desperate families sometimes turn familiar melodies into ownership claims. Let legal handle the Reed situation before it becomes emotional." She read it twice. Marcus had not yet been entered into any company report. Neither had Lila. Claire turned the phone face down. "Who knows we're here?" Marcus asked. "No one should." "That isn't what I asked." The archivist lifted the cassette again, and beneath the cold lamp the pencil mark under the replaced label became slightly clearer. It was not a catalog number. It was the beginning of a name, N. Reed. The letters beneath the replaced label were faint, but they were there, N. Reed. Claire lowered the cassette onto the white cloth and looked at Marcus differently, not with trust yet, but with the careful attention people gave a locked door after hearing something move behind it. "This proves a name was hidden," she said. "It does not prove who hid it." "Then don't guess," Marcus replied. "Test what can be tested." The next afternoon, Claire arranged a session at an independent recording studio on the south side. No Whitmore employees were present. No company logos hung on the walls. Marcus sat before 3 small studio monitors while an audio engineer loaded 3 unlabeled files onto the console. One was the surviving cassette transfer. One was a digitally restored copy. The third was an unreleased commercial arrangement that had been stripped of identifying metadata. "Tell us what you hear," Claire said. "Not what you remember." Marcus rested his hands on his knees. He did not ask which recording mattered most. The first track carried soft cedar strings beneath a layer of tape hiss. Before the melody entered, 2 faint metallic taps sounded against the guitar body. Marcus touched the wedding ring hanging beneath his shirt. "That one is Naomi." The engineer glanced toward Claire. "Because of the voice?" Because she used her ring to count me in when she didn't want to speak over Lila sleeping. The second file was cleaner, but the breathing between phrases had been flattened. The third began half a step lower and moved smoothly past the place where Naomi's bridge should have unsettled the harmony. Marcus leaned closer to the speaker. Play the third one again. What's wrong with it? Nothing, if you want it easy to sell. The air conditioner became suddenly loud in the silence that followed. The engineer replayed the passage. Marcus pointed to the waveform but did not touch the screen. They removed the bridge, lowered the key, and cleaned out the room noise. But the melody is still hers. Claire slowly set her pen across the closed folder in front of her. The test had not established ownership, but it had established something she could no longer dismiss. Marcus recognized physical details embedded in the recording before anyone showed him the files. He had not guessed. He had listened. How much do you think the song is worth? She asked. Marcus looked at her. Who can authorize Lila's voice being used? No one has recorded her. Not yet. That wasn't my question. Claire's expression shifted. You're worried someone will turn her into evidence. Or advertising. He asked that no camera enter the room, that no one contact Lila directly, and that every copy of Naomi's voice be logged. He never asked when money would arrive. Across town, an independent luthier opened the cedar guitar at Mason and Bell, while Wesley stood nearby with his arms folded. This is unnecessary, Wesley said pleasantly. The instrument has already been sold. The transaction is under review, Claire replied. Let's follow the process. Of course, I only don't want anyone creating a misunderstanding. The luthier loosened the strings and angled a narrow inspection light through the sound hole. Dust glowed along the braces. Beneath one wooden support, something pale had been trapped flat against the cedar. He reached in with long forceps and drew out a folded repair receipt, yellowed at the edges and marked with oil from an old workbench. Wesley's hand moved toward it. Marcus stepped closer but did not take the paper. Let him bag it first. The luthier placed it inside a clear evidence sleeve. The printed shop name had nearly faded, but the handwritten lines remained visible. Naomi Reed. Cedar Acoustic. Bridge Repair. Home Again Bluebird. Demo Box 14B. A chair leg scraped once across the floor and stopped. Wesley's polite smile remained, though a pulse had appeared near his temple. Old paperwork gets inside instruments all the time, he said. It proves maintenance, not ownership. That may be true, Claire answered. So we'll verify it. Marcus stared at Naomi's name without reaching for the sleeve. The receipt was the first object outside his home that connected her directly to the guitar, the song, and Box 14B. It did not prove who stole anything. It proved he had not invented the connection. Claire instructed the luthier to seal the guitar, preserve the receipt, contact the retired repairman listed in the service number, and make no copies inside Whitmore's system. Then her phone rang. An assistant from Grant Mercer's office spoke quickly enough that Marcus could hear part of the question from across the counter. Did she find the blue family folio? Claire's eyes moved to the worn book beneath Marcus's arm. No report had described its color. No photograph had been entered into evidence. She ended the call without answering and looked past Wesley toward the dark security camera above the register. The receipt had opened one door, but Grant's question revealed something larger waiting behind it. Someone inside Whitmore already knew exactly which pieces of Naomi's life had survived. Someone inside Whitmore already knew exactly which pieces of Naomi's life had survived. Claire ended the call from Grant's office, slipped her phone face down, and told the luthier to seal the repair receipt with the guitar. No internal scans, she said. No company server. Wesley gave a small professional laugh. That seems excessive. So did changing the serial number. I'm sure that can be explained. Then preserve everything needed to explain it. His smile held, but his thumb pressed hard against the edge of the counter until the skin whitened. The following morning, Claire brought Marcus to a rented conference room above a legal clinic, where the windows looked down on wet Chicago traffic and the heating vent clicked every 40 seconds. A woman from outside counsel placed a contract in a clear sleeve between them. Naomi Reed's name appeared at the bottom. The document claimed she had transferred every right to home again, Bluebird to Grant Mercer. Marcus stared at the signature. The capital are bent backward, narrow and sharp. Naomi's had always opened wide, like a loop of ribbon. When was this signed? He asked. The attorney read the date. Marcus did not answer at first. He took the hospital bracelet from a small envelope in his coat and laid it beside the contract. Naomi's name, admission number, and date were printed beneath a faded purple line. She was admitted that morning, he said. She couldn't stand without help. Claire's hand stopped halfway toward the file. Why do you have that? Because I packed her things when she didn't come home. The room became so quiet that the printer in the outer office sounded suddenly loud, feeding one sheet through its rollers. Marcus did not accuse anyone. He asked for the metadata. The attorney turned a laptop toward him. The contract carried a creation timestamp 11 days after the date beside Naomi's signature. It had later been scanned into Whitmore's archive under credentials assigned to Grant's division. A delayed scan could explain that, Claire said carefully. Could it explain the signature? Marcus asked. No one answered. He opened Naomi's blue folio and placed 3 pages beneath the contract. A school permission form for Lila, a handwritten grocery list, and a birthday card Naomi had written to him from the hospital. The same appeared in every one. Have an expert compare them, he said. Not me. Outside counsel had already found more. Grant's account accessed Archive 14B 6 days after Naomi died. A payment labeled Archival Consulting left Whitmore the next week and entered a company owned by Grant's brother-in-law. Wesley Bell called Grant's office less than 10 minutes after Lila hummed in the store. None of the facts stood alone as proof of theft. Together, they formed a pattern too deliberate to call coincidence. Claire rose and walked to the window. Her reflection floated over the gray glass. Expensive coat, controlled posture. A woman who had entered Mason and Bell pretending to be only another customer. There's something I should have told you, she said. Marcus looked at her. You work for Whitmore. I run it. The words landed without drama. Claire Whitmore, chief executive officer of the company holding Naomi's disputed song, stood across from a man who had repaired her father's recorder without knowing her name. Marcus's face did not soften. You let me walk into tests without telling me you represented the company. I needed to know whether the evidence survived without my position shaping what people said. And I needed to know who was asking questions about my wife. Claire accepted the rebuke without defending herself. You can stop cooperating. Marcus looked at Naomi's hospital bracelet, then at the false signature. Get my family independent counsel. Give us copies of every document. Then we continue. He could have posted the contract that afternoon. He could have named Grant publicly and let anger do the work evidence had not finished. Instead, Marcus called the hospital records office, found Naomi's old letters, and contacted a retired musician who had once driven her to Whitmore. He asked only what the man remembered, never what Marcus wanted him to confirm. When another songwriter heard rumors and said Grant may have taken one of her demos too, Marcus told her to save every receipt and speak to a lawyer before posting online. Claire watched his choices accumulate. She did not begin believing him because he was grieving. She began believing because, at every opening for revenge, he protected the integrity of the truth. By evening, she froze the commercial release and transferred the investigation to outside counsel. Less than an hour later, Marcus received an agreement titled Family Assistance and Confidential Resolution. The amount could clear his rent, replace the guitar, and buy years of safety. The conditions required silence, surrender of the blue folio for review, and no questions concerning other artists. Grant called personally. This protects your daughter. Marcus looked at Lila asleep beside the blue folio, one hand still resting on its worn cover. Anything that needs my silence is protecting someone else. The next morning, an online article called him an unemployed musician exploiting his child to extort a respected company. Beneath it was an announcement from Grant Mercer. A charity event for struggling families would be held at Mason and Bell, with Marcus's cedar guitar displayed as a donation from Whitmore Music. The lie was no longer hiding behind closed doors. It had rented a stage. By the time Marcus reached Mason and Bell, Grant Mercer had already turned the place where his guitar was taken into a stage for generosity. White banners reading saving music for working families covered the scarred walls. Television lights heated the narrow aisles, and children waited beside donated instruments while reporters praised Whitmore Music for protecting struggling artists. Behind Grant, Marcus's cedar guitar stood inside a glass case beneath a polished brass sign. Donated by Whitmore Music. Lila stopped beside Marcus and tightened both arms around Naomi's blue folio. "That's ours," she whispered. Marcus took her hand. "Stay with Ms. Carter." His independent attorney led Lila toward the back wall, away from the cameras, while Marcus walked forward in the same faded denim jacket he had worn when Wesley stamped the sale receipt. Grant saw him and opened his arms with practiced warmth. "Mr. Reed, I'm glad you came. You invited me, because misunderstandings should be resolved with dignity." Grant's smile remained fixed as a photographer moved closer. On the table beside him rested an oversized housing assistance check with Marcus's name printed across it. The amount was large enough to make the crowd murmur. "Whitmore Music wants to help this father get back on his feet," Grant announced. "No family should suffer because grief has made ordinary decisions feel unfair." For one moment, it appeared he had won the room. Accepting the check would make Marcus look purchased. Refusing it would make him look proud, reckless, and ungrateful in front of his daughter. Grant lifted the check toward him. "This ends the hardship." Marcus looked past it at the guitar sealed behind glass. The crescent-shaped scratch near the bridge caught the camera light. "Does it return my wife's name?" he asked. The murmuring thinned. Grant lowered the check only slightly. "This event is about helping families, not litigating private claims in public." "Then why is disputed property behind you?" Wesley stepped forward in a navy blazer, hands folded with the calm of a man explaining store policy. "Mr. Reed willingly sold the instrument. We have documentation." Claire stood near the rear entrance, silent beneath the bright lights. She could have ended the exchange by announcing her authority, but she waited beside outside counsel, watching who changed their story when the cameras were running. Marcus did not call Wesley a liar. He placed his original receipt copy on the table. The serial number was missing one digit, and the price was lower than the cash Wesley had counted in front of him. "A clerical mistake," Wesley said. "The system was closing." Claire's attorney set down the point-of-sale log. The timestamp showed the register remained active for another 47 minutes. A camera shutter clicked, then another. Wesley's eyes moved toward the security camera. Above the counter, Grant stepped in smoothly. Even if an employee entered a number incorrectly, that has nothing to do with songwriting ownership. For a few seconds, the explanation steadied the room. A reporter asked whether Marcus was using a receipt dispute to strengthen a weak copyright claim. Grant gave a sorrowful nod, as though disappointed rather than threatened. "Pain can connect unrelated events," he said. "That does not make those connections true." Marcus turned to Claire's attorney. She placed a sealed evidence sleeve beside the receipt. Inside was the yellowed repair slip found beneath the guitar's internal brace. "Naomi Reed, Cedar Acoustic, Home Again Bluebird, Demo Box 14B. Grant barely glanced at it. "Old repair paperwork proves maintenance, not ownership." "That's true," Marcus said. Grant's expression loosened. Then Marcus continued. "So why did your office ask whether Claire found the blue family folio before anyone reported its color?" The air conditioning fan clicked off, leaving the room unnaturally still. Grant adjusted one cuff. "An employee may have seen it." "Which employee?" "I don't manage every conversation in a corporation." Claire's attorney raised a tablet. Security footage filled the screen behind Grant. It showed Wesley altering the receipt after Marcus turned away, lifting the repair slip from inside the guitar, photographing it, then pushing it beneath the brace when Claire re-entered the store. The next image displayed Wesley's call log and a message sent to Grant's office minutes after Lila hummed. "Secure instrument before provenance questions spread." Wesley's mouth opened, but Grant spoke first. That message refers to preserving disputed material. Proper procedure, nothing more. He sounded reasonable again, controlled, almost convincing. Marcus glanced toward Lila. A reporter had angled a camera toward her, and she had raised the blue folio to hide her face. Marcus stepped away from the evidence table and placed himself between the lens and his daughter. "Ask the adults," he said. "Leave her out of it." Claire watched him surrender the strongest position in the room to protect a child who could have made his story more sympathetic. When Marcus returned, Grant was telling the cameras that no receipt could establish ownership of the missing ending. Marcus stopped. "Missing ending?" Grant's voice faltered for less than a second. "The section your people claim was removed. No one here said which section was cut." Grant looked toward Claire. She remained motionless. Marcus took one step closer, his voice low enough that the cameras had to strain for it. "I didn't ask what the song was worth. I asked how you knew what was missing." Grant's attorney immediately requested the event be paused. Grant reached for the repair sleeve, but outside counsel moved it beyond his hand. Then his control broke in one small, fatal sentence. That Bluebird home demo was never commercially viable. No public document contained that internal title. No reporter had heard it. Even Wesley looked at him. Claire finally stepped forward. "Preserve every camera file, every phone, and every archive record connected to this event." Grant tried to smile. "Claire, we should handle this privately. We tried privacy. Someone used it to bury a name." Her phone vibrated. She read the message without changing expression, then looked at Marcus. The forensic lab had recovered a second layer of audio hidden after the cut on Archive 14B. It contained 2 male voices, and one had just been authenticated as Grant Mercer's. Claire locked the screen before anyone else could see the transcript. "Tomorrow night," she said, looking toward the cameras, "the original file will be played before Whitmore's full board, its artists, and the public." Grant's face remained composed, but his hand slowly withdrew from the table. Somewhere beneath the recovered music, a dead man had left behind a conversation Grant had spent years believing no one would ever hear. The recovered audio began before anyone at the Whitmore Music Founders Listening Gala had finished taking their seats. A man's voice, worn by age but steady with authority, filled the glass and wood hall. "Grant, stop the release. Find Naomi Reed. This song is hers until she says otherwise." On the enormous screen behind the stage, the waveform moved without a break. Then Grant Mercer's younger voice answered, clear enough that no one leaned forward to hear it. "I'll handle the ownership." Grant's pen slipped from his fingers and struck the table once. Claire Whitmore stood beneath the stage lights beside outside counsel, her face controlled, her hands empty. She had not opened with an accusation. She had opened with evidence. "The recording has been examined by 2 independent forensic laboratories," she said. "No explices. No generated speech. No missing intervals." Grant's attorney rose. "A decades-old conversation without context cannot establish misconduct." "Then we'll provide the context." The hall darkened except for the screen. One document appeared at a time, slowly enough for the board, the artists, and the cameras to follow. Naomi's blue music folio, its paper and ink matched to the years she wrote the song. The torn copyright receipt bearing Whitmore's receiving stamp. The repair slip found inside Marcus's cedar guitar, connecting Naomi Reed, Home Again, Bluebird, and Demo Box 14B. The hospital record showing Naomi was admitted on the date she supposedly signed away her rights. The contract signature with its narrow backward are beside page after page of Naomi's true handwriting. The metadata showing the contract had been created 11 days later. No one whispered now. The soft rotation of the ventilation fan became audible above them. Claire continued. The archive log showed Grant's credentials entering box 14B after Naomi's death. Bank records traced a payment to a company owned by his brother-in-law. Mason and Bell's camera footage showed Wesley altering Marcus's receipt, removing the repair slip, photographing the guitar, and contacting Grant's office. On the screen, Grant's own message appeared beneath the timestamp. Secure instrument before provenance questions spread. Grant reached for a glass of water. The rim touched his teeth before he set it down untouched. Administrative decisions are being presented as a conspiracy, he said, his voice dry. That song had no established owner. Marcus sat several feet away with Lila beside him. The cedar guitar rested across his knees, released temporarily from evidence custody for the authenticated demonstration. Naomi's worn strap, her name still visible in the embroidery, crossed his faded denim shoulder. He did not look at Grant. He looked at the blue folio open on the music stand. Play the third recording, Claire said. The commercial arrangement filled the room, smooth and polished, ending where Naomi's bridge should have been. Then Claire nodded to Marcus. He placed his fingers on the strings and played the missing passage. The first chord sounded almost gentle. The second bent away from expectation. By the third, the room seemed to remember something it had never heard. The cedar body carried the low warmth captured on Archive 14B, and before the final phrase Marcus tapped the guitar twice with the wedding ring hanging from the cord around his neck. The same two metallic notes answered from the original recording. Lila stood close enough for her sleeve to touch his shoulder. She did not address the crowd. She simply hugged the blue folio to her chest and hummed the small line Naomi had used as a bedtime song. Marcus stopped before the last note, leaving the melody suspended between them. Claire pressed play on the recorder he had repaired without knowing who she was. The recovered tape continued beyond her father's warning. Static moved softly through the speakers. A chair creaked somewhere in the back row. Then Naomi laughed, faint and tired, as though she were standing in a room far smaller and warmer than this one. Lila, her voice said, this one is for you. The black screen changed. White letters appeared across it. Written by Naomi Reed. No one applauded. Not at first. A board member lowered her glasses. A producer's folder slid from his lap and landed open on the floor. Wesley Bell stared at the carpet. Grant remained behind the microphone, but his mouth opened without sound. The silence lasted long enough for Marcus to hear Lila release the breath she had been holding. Her hand found his. He closed his fingers around it. Claire faced the board. Effective immediately, Grant Mercer and every executive connected to the falsified transfer are suspended pending independent review. The release is frozen. Naomi Reed's authorship will be restored across all company records and platforms subject to the court's final order. Outside counsel is transferring the forgery and financial files to the appropriate authorities. Every legacy work processed through this division will be audited. She paused before adding, I am also removing myself from direct control of that investigation. Grant finally found his voice. Claire, you are destroying this company over one disputed song. No, she said. We damaged this company when we decided an unknown artist's name was easier to erase than a profitable lie. Reporters lifted their cameras, but Claire ordered that none be pointed toward Lila. Security preserved the hall's devices and escorted Grant from the board table without touching him beyond what procedure required. He did not look angry anymore. He looked smaller, as though each document had removed a layer of the room he once controlled. Before he passed Marcus, he stopped. What do you want from me? Marcus rested one hand on the crescent-shaped scratch near the guitar's bridge. Nothing you can give back alone. The first applause began somewhere behind him, quiet and uneven, then spread through the hall. Marcus did not stand to receive it. He pulled Lila closer and looked at Naomi's name on the screen until the letters blurred. The truth had begun moving through courts, contracts, archives, and cameras, but it had not yet secured their home, healed his daughter, or decided what kind of man he would become now that people were finally listening. And when Claire placed a proposed recording contract beside the blue folio, Marcus did not reach for the pen. When the gala doors opened, the crowd left more quietly than it had entered. Board members carried sealed folders instead of champagne glasses. Reporters were directed away from Lila, and every device connected to Grant Mercer's division was placed under preservation order before midnight. Marcus stood beneath Naomi's name until the screen went dark. Then he closed the blue folio, lifted the cedar guitar by its worn strap, and took his daughter home without touching the recording contract Claire had placed beside him. Justice did not arrive all at once. It came in stamped envelopes, scheduled hearings, corrected databases, and calls from attorneys who had finally learned to say Naomi Reed's name before discussing the value of her song. Whitmore froze every release connected to the false transfer. Outside counsel sent the forged contract and financial records to investigators. Grant was dismissed for violating his duties and barred from accessing the archive while the civil case moved forward. Wesley Bell's altered receipts triggered a city review of his business practices, and customers who had been underpaid for instruments were invited to submit their records. No one dragged either man through a cheering crowd. The evidence did what anger could not. It followed them into rooms where charm, reputation, and charity banners no longer mattered. At the housing hearing, the property manager repeated that policy had been applied equally. Marcus's legal aid attorney placed the payment records and improper lockout notice on the table. The judge ruled that the building could not remove Marcus and Lila without completing the required city process, and the landlord accepted the rental assistance Marcus had qualified for before Whitmore ever offered him money. It was not a mansion, a miracle check, or a favor from Claire. It was time, protection, and the right to remain behind their own locked door while the case was resolved. 3 months later, Naomi's authorship appeared on every official company record and digital listing under a court-approved temporary agreement. The withheld royalties were placed in a monitored account until the ownership case was complete. Mason and Bell's sale was voided because the serial number and price had been altered. When the guitar was returned, Marcus signed for it beneath fluorescent courthouse lights. He ran one thumb across the crescent-shaped scratch near the bridge, then placed it back inside the case without playing a note. "Aren't you happy?" Lila asked. "I am." "You don't look happy." Marcus closed the latches. Some things need quiet before they feel real. Lila no longer had to carry the story for adults. Claire ordered every interview. Request involving the child to be refused unless Marcus and an independent advocate approved it. When a television producer offered to make Lila the face of a campaign called The Miracle Girl, Marcus declined before the meeting ended. "She remembered her mother's song," he said. "She didn't volunteer to become proof for the rest of us." Instead, Lila returned to school, where she practiced recorder, complained about math, and chose one afternoon to play her mother's melody at the spring music program. Marcus sat in the back row in his faded denim jacket, hands folded, letting her music belong to childhood again. Claire's apology came without cameras. She met Marcus at a community legal center and placed a written accountability plan on the table. Independent archive audits, two-step verification for transfers, outside counsel for low-income creators, protected copies of every submitted work, and a rule preventing children from being used in publicity surrounding ownership disputes. She had temporarily stepped away from direct control of the legacy archive while investigators worked. "You were right not to trust me quickly," she said. "I should have told you who I was before I asked you to enter those tests." Marcus read every page before looking up. "An apology matters when the system changes after it. Then judge me by what changes." Marcus did. Slowly. He rejected Whitmore's first offer to turn him into a company spokesman, but accepted a paid advisory position only after an independent panel approved it. He required artists to have their own lawyers and access to records outside Whitmore's servers. A portion of Naomi's royalties and settlements, joined by contributions from other musicians, established the Naomi Reed Creator Rights Project. Marcus refused to control it alone. Artists, engineers, attorneys, and neighborhood advocates shared oversight, because he had learned that even good intentions became dangerous when one person held every key. 6 months passed before Claire came to his new apartment for anything unrelated to the investigation. It was small, safe, close to Lila's school, and just large enough for the cedar guitar to stand beside the window. Claire arrived with takeout containers, not flowers or an expensive gift. She sat at the far end of the couch while Marcus tuned the guitar. "You don't owe me a place in this room," she said. He adjusted the lowest string, listening until the note settled. "That's why I can choose whether to make one." Trust entered quietly after that, through ordinary dinners, difficult questions, and the freedom to leave without punishment. One evening, Lila opened the blue folio on the music stand. The torn receipt remained inside a clear sleeve, no longer a scrap of paper hidden in an old book, but the first surviving mark of a truth people had tried to remove. Marcus fastened Naomi's embroidered strap to the guitar and played the bridge all the way through. When the last chord faded, no one rushed to fill the room with words. Lila rested her head against his shoulder. Claire sat near the window with both hands around a cooling cup. The silence was not shock now. It was recognition. "Do you think Mom knows her song came back?" Lila whispered. Marcus looked at the little bluebird drawn beside the chorus, then at the crescent-shaped scar on the guitar. "Maybe a song comes home when people finally tell the truth about who carried it." He began again, and Lila hummed beside him, soft but unafraid, because dignity had never needed to shout. It had only waited for kindness to become evidence, and for evidence to become justice.